Real quick, I want to share you some latest news. Visors. This is not a performance gain by any means. Dent. Sometimes they call them performance dents in your pipe, but a performance dent in your GoPro does not make any additional performance. But that's a whole nother story. Today, we're going to talk about Super Bowl and Super Bowl backflip in 2018. So 2018 Super Bowl backflip was a huge thing in my career. He's done it, ladies and gentlemen! Amazing opportunity to represent Minnesota, represent snowmobiling, represent Polaris. You know, such an amazing experience to be able to do this all at the Super Bowl, okay? So they had the Super Bowl Live interactive zone, which was like, I don't know, it was like Nicollet Mall. This whole street was blocked off and they had all these different things for fans to go and do. And the idea was on Saturday of Super Bowl weekend, backflip over Nicollet Mall, the street, 100-foot backflip. It was gonna be absolutely incredible. But I'm gonna tell you a story about how it all came to be and how Justin Timberlake beat me out for this Super Bowl thing. So let's get into it. So starting off, US Bank Stadium was built. You know, it was said that Super Bowl, what the heck Super Bowl was it? 53 or something maybe? I don't know what, I don't remember what Super Bowl it is. But anyway, it was the Super Bowl in 2018. So they said, you're gonna get the Super Bowl. They did one season, and then the second season, you know, I imagine they did one season to work out any bugs or anything that they had in the stadium. Then second season, we're gonna hold the Super Bowl there. Coincidentally, the Vikings, Minnesota Vikings, home field had a phenomenal year. We go into playoffs, went all the way up to, you know, the conference championship, and we got smoked by the Eagles. But the idea was so storybook. It would have been the first time that the home team would have been playing at their stadium for the Super Bowl, and then only a couple years later, Tom Brady ends up doing it with the Tampa Bay Bucks. But for that moment, we could have been the first ones, the Vikings, but we didn't do it. And anyone from Minnesota feels my pain, knows the struggle we have as Minnesota Viking fans. So anyway, moving on. Polaris is a sponsor of US Bank Stadium. If you come in the main entry, the big Polaris logo, they've got, you know, snowmobiles and side-by-sides and stuff hanging from the ceiling. Polaris coming from Minnesota, what a perfect match to be part of that stadium. So as part of the stadium, each year they have a Super Bowl committee, and because Polaris was a sponsor of the stadium, they were involved in these Super Bowl committee conversations. And the idea for the Minneapolis Super Bowl was the bold north. They wanted to embrace what is northern Minnesota, what is that experience like. So they wanted to integrate these different things in to kind of give it this Minnesota flavor. And as they're in this meeting, the Polaris folks are sitting there, and somebody brought this snowmobile guy that they saw jumping around St. Paul doing all these tricks. And the question was asked, does anybody know this guy? Polaris says, yeah, we know him pretty well. So anyway, they said, you know, could he do something like urban snowmobiling for the Super Bowl? So messages relayed to me, hey, they want you to do urban snowmobiling Super Bowl style. And I went, whoa! Oh my goodness, that is amazing. The gears start turning. I'm jumping off buildings. I'm in the stadium. I had all kinds of stuff, but I'm gonna get into that. So anyway, so they tell me they want this urban snowmobile thing. And it was kind of real vague. They're like potentially halftime show. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. So I ended up creating this whole urban snowmobiling kind of skit. And I started doing some research and looking at photos of US Bank Stadium, how far it is from the football field up to the main entrance. It's like a huge step up. Obviously, there's all the seats and everything. But I'm like, I bet you I could go wide open across that field and step up and land up on that upper level, probably 100, 100-foot step up or something like that, drive through the big doors. They have these huge doors that open for the games, and I'm like, I could go right through those. The idea was Levi's trip to the Super Bowl. So the idea was I'm riding snowmobile through some iconic places in Minnesota, you know, go past Paul Bunyan statues in Bemidji and you know, some other things like that, go past the big fish in Garrison, you know, just kind of give it all these cool Minnesota flavors. But the idea is I'm riding my snowmobile there, and then I'm going to ride it right to the Super Bowl. Well, they have it all barricaded off. So once I get to that barricade, I'm like, well, how do I get by this? Hit a snowbank, jump up on a building, jump off the building. Now I'm inside the secure zone. Cops see me. They start chasing me. We got a bogey. Guy on a snowmobile in the safe zone. So they start chasing me. You know, I go and backflip over the Viking Stadium outside of the stadium. They have a Viking ship out there. Backflip over that. Go blazing down the side of the building and go in the side entrance. And then we just hear the video stop. So the idea was I was going to have this all pre-shot, and they would play this on the jumbo screen at halftime, okay? So everyone would be watching that. They would see that. I would go into the building, and then it would cut, black screen, cops saying, we got him. He's inside the building. We got him cornered, or something like that. Boom, spotlight, across the field. I come wide open, hit the jump up out of, or do the 100-foot step up or whatever it was, jump up onto the platform, out the doors, and they'd be like, oh, we lost him. And then I'd turn around, come back in, wave to the crowd. It would have been amazing. So anyway, so Polaris, I get this whole thing sketched out. I had my wife drive all the way to Iowa for snowcross while I'm sketching this idea out and whatnot. And so I give this to Polaris. They bring it to Super Bowl committee. Super Bowl committee says, this sounds great, but you know, we have Justin Timberlake ready for the halftime show, and we feel he's gonna do a great job for us. So Justin Timberlake beat me out for the halftime show is what I'm claiming. So anyway, so that's how it all started. Then it got narrowed down to, we want you to do a big feat of sort on Nicollet Mall. And I go, okay, let's shift gears here and go into the next thing. So I went down there, started looking at it, at the area, and there's multiple skyways in Minneapolis. And I said, hey, maybe I jump over that. You know, I could probably jump over it, or maybe even backflip over it. I mean, how cool would that be? You could have people in the skyway, jump over them. There was a rooftop. I think it was Randall's Steakhouse. People could see from up there. You could have the streets, the whole deal. And so that was an idea. And then the other one was, I'm like, well, I could jump over an intersection. I could just backflip over this. And that one's pretty straightforward. It involves a lot. It was a little bit tricky bringing up the skyway thing, because that's a whole nother animal. So anyway, had a few different ideas. They said, hey, 100-foot backflip would be amazing. So that's what we went with. After we agreed on the 100-foot backflip, we started trying to build out the show, and we're like, hey, we're gonna need more than just that 1 feat, because it goes by so quick. So we got a few freestyle riders involved. They're like, could they do a freestyle show off of that landing? I said, oh, for sure they would. So I reached out to a few of my freestyle buddies, Justin Hoyer, Fuzzy Rasmussen, and Josh Penner, and just said, hey, would you guys want to do this? They said, absolutely. So we built a practice setup off of my big landing for a 70-foot gap, which is the freestyle setup, and they just practiced on that, and they got ready. And then I obviously had a replica of it, which is a 25-foot tall landing, 100-foot jump that I started practicing to. But the interesting thing about the practice was Super Bowl is the week after X Games. Okay, so it was my last year competing at X Games, 2018, when the Super Bowl flip happened. So I was, I'm practicing making snow, getting everything all set up to do this. And I'm literally like going from doing backflips and doing tricks on my freestyle course, on my freestyle sled, jumping on another sled, and then doing, this 100-foot backflip, practicing for that. But an interesting thing about going from sled to sled was I did my freestyle. I got where I was pretty good. We were hitting the foam pit. I was doing my tricks, had everything kind of dialed, and I said, okay, it was closer to maybe the 2 weeks out from Super Bowl, so maybe 3 weeks, and I started like, okay, we got to get the Super Bowl sled ready. So we pull the Super Bowl sled out. It's a brand new 128 race sled. My freestyle sled, we actually converted it down to a 121 because the idea was we thought it backflipped easier. Come to find out, it really didn't do much of anything. It just created more work for us. But anyway, so I've got a 121 freestyle sled, a 128 Super Bowl sled. Been jumping, flipping, doing all this stuff on this freestyle one. And then I started thinking about the Super Bowl flip, and I said, you know what? I think I'm gonna try running the snow flap on it just in case, because I have metal screws in the track. And I'm like, just in case one of those comes out, maybe it would help having a little bit more, a guard, we'll say, just so these screws don't go flying off into the crowd or something. So I take this new 128 race sled, and I go hit my freestyle ramp, 70-footer. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna make sure everything's good flipping this. I flip the thing the first time, comes off the lip, everything feels perfect. I get upside down and it feels like it stops rotating. And I'm like, what the heck is that? So I panic rev, I get it around, it lands, and I go, and I have my two buddies were there, one of them filming, the other one just kind of watching, the compound crew guys. And I told him, I said, I'm like, I don't know why it just like stopped like that, but it's pretty scary. And first thought is, must be the 128. We're running 121. So I go, I hit the thing again, same exact thing. Comes off, feels perfect, and then it would feel like it would stop upside down. I did the third one, and finally I'm like, let me look at the video. So I watched the video, and as I come off the ramp, I start going upside down, and that snow flap, it's like big. And it straight out the back, like fully bending out backwards like that. And then as soon as I would get about halfway around, then the wind, the rotation would, like the initial wing, as I'm flipping out, it would pry it open. And then that second bit, the snow flap would suck back around and complete the flip. We should, maybe we will take that snow flap off too.
I definitely would.
Take the snow flap off, I go out there, thing flips awesome. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness. So eliminated the snow flap, did it on the 70-footer a bunch, then we went to the big dog, went to the 100-footer, and started getting my distances and whatnot. So the difference between the two ramps is like, from the 70-footer to the 100-footer, you're probably 8 to 10 mile an hour difference in speeds, but the 100-footer is 2 feet taller and probably 12, 15 foot longer, really smooth, long ramp. And the jump is so floaty. It feels so good hitting it. So I get my distances figured out, and then I start flipping the thing. And so I'm going from freestyle testing to Super Bowl testing, back and forth for a little bit. We go to X Games. X Games went great. We ended up getting 2 silvers that year. Super stoked. Get back to Minnesota immediately and go back into Super Bowl testing. I'm testing. After that, everything's going great. Wednesday, we literally 2 days, like the day before we leave. So it's like Wednesday, I was planning to practice, Thursday practice, pack everything up, head to the cities, and get ready for Friday build out of everything. So Wednesday, I remember it was so scary because I was feeling pretty good about everything. Everything was going smooth. And I hit this flip the one time. For whatever reason, I hit a little fast, and I had like a pretty long landing to practice on. And I almost completely overshot the landing. Landed down on the bottom, panic rev to get out of it. And I go straight out the back. And we kind of had everything coned off, so we knew like, here's your safe zone area you have. I go right through the cones, which means I would have ran into the Jersey barriers and then either pushed those or flipped over that into there were 3 different semis right on the backside of those Jersey barriers. And I'm going, oh, wow, that was sketchy. So the other thing that really made me nervous was the landing that I had to test on was a little bit flatter. So I had more downslope, where the one that we were going to be jumping to, the scaffolding landing they're going to build, was a bit steeper. And I'm going, well, in this situation, if I would have hit it as hard as I did in that practice on the scaffolding landing, I would have missed it completely and flat landed and whiskey throttled. It would have been bad. So that really was on my mind from that point forward. So I start going and just doing straight airs, get back on target, and I got it where I was just nailing it right at the 100 to 110 foot range. And we practiced like a lot, and then of course it gets super windy, those days right before it, and I'm like, I gotta go. I gotta try to jump through this wind just in case, just so we're prepared in case that happens come show day, because you gotta be ready for that. So I'm jumping through the wind. I got, it was going pretty good. Had one that got corked out pretty bad and kind of swapped out of it, but it wasn't bad. But I was feeling pretty confident by the end. After we got all of our practice jumps in, then we loaded everything up, hauled it down to the cities. While all of that was happening, all this practice and getting ready, I also have all kinds of media stuff going on. So there's news channels and whatnot that are coming to my shop, doing these interviews, doing all this pre-Super Bowl stuff with me. And I'm thinking, man, I've got X Games coming up. We've got the Super Bowl thing coming up. The schedule, you got to get that practice in, but I'm trying to make sure I get all these other things. So I've kind of spreading myself a bit thin. The other thing that I had was we were shooting these videos, these countdown videos. So 11 days and 12 days or whatever it is till the jump, 9 days until the jump. So I shot all these videos beforehand with Joe Weigel, who's he's a genius when it comes to videos and videography and whatnot. So I'm shooting all these videos with him. I think we did maybe 4 of them. One was ice fishing, did another one. We went to my high school football field and we're playing football out there. But anyway, so we're doing these videos, and this is all happening in my month of practice of January, when I'm freestyling and getting ready for the Super Bowl thing. So I'm going, wow, this is a busy schedule, and this whole time you're trying to control your emotions, so you make sure you stay focused on task at hand. And it was pretty stressful, to say the least. So once we got to the event, it was right out of a storybook. It was a dream. They actually made a rendering of what it was going to look like, the crowd, the jump, and the backflip. And after seeing the end results, the photos that were taken, it was almost spot on. They nailed it. But for me, it was so storybook because it started snowing that day. Fortunately, no wind, but it snowed. And it made it like we were in a big snow globe for this event. So we get there, and they had, I think it was 8 p.m. till 5 a.m. to build the landing and set everything up for the jump. So the crew, everybody gets hammering on that, get everything set. I come back next day, and it was perfect. It was so perfect. And we had 2 practice jumps. First one, I remember, I'm like, don't overshoot this thing. So I totally I had a safety deck, so I kind of lobbed and safety decked it, bounced off. Second one, landed it perfect, felt pretty good, and I was like, okay, I think I'm ready for this. So we started the show. The freestyle guys, they were all doing a great job, landing all their tricks and whatnot, and it's okay, it's game time. And we had Chris Hockey was announcing it, which the guy, he's a great dude. I love listening to his announcing. I remember, they're like, all right, it's coming up, 5 minutes or whatever. They're giving these heads up, and I'm like, oh man. So finally it's go time. I get on the sled, get it warmed up, and I forgot to turn my visor GoPro on. I remember I got it for the practice jump, but not for the actual jump. Come off the ramp, super nervous to OJ it, hit the flip, absolutely perfect. I mean, it was 100 foot, probably right on the dot. I hit the down slope, perfect, landed, and it was such a sense of relief as soon as I got it. I jump off my sled, hug my wife, run to the top of that hill, and it was, people were giving me some crap because, believe it or not, 25-foot tall landing full of soft snow, it was actually pretty hard to get up there. So I finally got up there, and I remember I was up on the top, and everywhere I could see, as far as I could see, it was just a sea of people. And I'm going, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And people are screaming and yelling, and I'm like, wow. Like, I just remember thinking, I'm like, I don't know what a rock star, what they feel like with a stadium full of people, but I'm like, that's probably the closest I'm ever gonna get to that. I mean, it was amazing. Just all the way down the street, just a sea of people. So cool, so cool. So we wrap up, do the jump, everything went awesome. And like I said, it was just such an honor to be able to represent snowmobiling and represent Minnesota, introduce how many people that have never seen snowmobiles that came to the Super Bowl or whatever, just to show them like, hey, like snowmobiles are pretty fun. They're pretty cool. So awesome opportunity. We did end up scoring tickets for the Super Bowl. So I went to the Super Bowl with partner in the race team, Glenn, and his wife Bev, and my wife Kristen, and the four of us went there. And only note I have on going to the Super Bowl was it was the quietest time I've ever been in US Bank Stadium. And I thought, why is that? And I'm like, well, I suppose there's probably half the crowd is cheering for one team, half for the other. Where you go to a Vikings game, it's like majority of the folks are cheering for the Vikes. So really neat experience. Check that box. I don't think I'm gonna do it again because it was pretty expensive, but awesome to be able to cap off such an amazing weekend, amazing project, being able to do a bucket list item. So anyway, that's Super Bowl backflip. If you guys got any questions, drop them in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you guys a ton for watching. We'll see you next time.